Hello, my wonderful students. Welcome to week 3 of Dark Side Communication. This week brings us to the most interesting topic for me, simply because it feels like it's the most relevant. More and more, we are getting into a cyber world with cyber identity, and all of these topics about identifying who we are as a person and how we portray ourselves and how that differs from in person and online are becoming more and more relevant. And so I want to spend time today talking about the lecture slides, as well as offering a few more articles for you to consider. I have a feeling that this topic in particular is going to be a bit more popular, simply because, like I said, it's the most relevant. We all switch from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to our email, and we spend as much time there as we do talking to people in person. And as sad as that can sound, it's the reality of our everyday lives now. So I feel like it's going to be a popular topic if you can find a way to be very specific about this topic. So, not just identity in cyberspace, but something really specific. Try to do that for your final paper if you're thinking somewhere along the lines of this topic. That's just my tidbit for advice for today. So, to talk about the dark and the light side of having different personas. I taught an intro to communication class a couple of times face to face, and we talked about we had discussions about the pros and the cons of having the ability to communicate with somebody not in a face-to-face light. And we talked about social media, but we also talked about texting and how do we prefer communicating via text rather than in person or on the phone. And we talked specifically about arguments, and it was pretty enlightening to think and talk to these 18-year-old, most of them were 18-year-old freshmen students, and they said, I prefer to argue on text message. If we're going to have an argument, I want to do it within text messages, because I can delete, I can go back, I can add an emoji if I don't want something to come out wrong. And if you say something in an argument and don't mean it that way, well, you can't go back and erase. So I thought that was, that does sound like a really good pro. Although I feel like arguments should be in person, you should be able to practice filtering yourself and put that much effort into a relationship. I see what they're saying. So when I'm thinking about the dark and the light side of manipulation of self in cyberspace, and I'm thinking about texting in that context, but thinking about the light side of manipulation of self, I also think about professionalism and emails. So when I send an email, I sound way different than when I'm talking, and some of you can probably see that already as my students. Maybe I've sent a detailed email to you, and it kind of came off stern and really short, or not so personal. But when you see my lecture videos, you're thinking, oh, she seems way more laid back than I thought. And I've tried to be more aware of that this semester with this course in particular, and add some more exclamation points and smiley faces, because when I'm typing up an email, I'm really just concerned about making sure that the information is accurate and making sure that the message is clear, that you can go back and read and it's organized, and I lose the personality that you can put in with things like punctuation and emojis, and sometimes I forget about that in email. And sometimes that's a good thing. When I am talking to people via email at work, I don't want to come off always as friendly and happy, because people may not take me seriously. I want them to know that I am efficient. I know what I'm talking about. I'm credible. And so typing up an email sometimes does me better because I can stick to the message, whereas I'm a very relational type person. If you come into my office to talk to me, I want to get to know you. I want to have a conversation. How's your day? How's your son? How's life? And that can be distracting sometimes. So I see that as another pro of the manipulation of self online. I mean, the cons are really straightforward. For some people, a pro can be I'm pretty shy and online I'm not, so I can express myself more. But what about the people that are trying to get to know you? They may not have an accurate representation. So the cons of manipulation of self is that although someone's getting to know you as you've presented yourself online, maybe they don't feel as um, like they know you as well as they would face to face. It's a really different interaction. I mean, I mentioned it before in another video. Have you ever met someone online and then when you met them in person, it just felt different? You kind of thought, was I even talking to the same person? And it doesn't always have to be in a romantic context. Maybe it was, workplace, you've only exchanged emails, and then once you meet, once you're at the conference or the in-person meeting, they seem different. So, like I said, the cons are really, really general. They're really straightforward, and that's basically what we're talking about mostly in this lecture. So sorry for the dark of it, but we are in dark side of communication, right? So identities on social media specifically is where I'm going to next. How are they different from face to face? I have a classmate that I went to high school with who was pretty grumpy. And lately, I've been seeing her on Facebook, and she's always very happy and blessed and and thankful. And I'm so glad to see her. Gratitude is a powerful, powerful emotion, thought process. I'm very happy to see that. But it makes me wonder, has she changed, or is this just how she presents herself on social media? So that's one small example. But a lot of times, people can be different. There are people that are very outspoken and political now on Facebook, and they aren't really that way. In person, they're very pleasant, but that's their venue for having political discussions. And if you have any other examples, please comment below. I would love to have that discussion and just hear examples of people that you know. I find it very interesting how we present ourselves differently on social media than we do in person. But there is also, talk about a paradox, not only presenting ourselves different online than we do in person, but also presenting ourselves in different ways based on the different social media site that you're on. And I know that you've seen memes that talk about, well, maybe you haven't, but maybe some of you have seen the memes going on about me on Facebook versus me on Twitter. And I think it's hilarious because it's true, especially for the, 18 to 25 or, anyone in their 20s. I think Facebook has all of our, classmates and teachers and family members, aunts and uncles and grandmas. Everyone's on Facebook now, and it's wonderful. You get to connect with way more people now that, more people are joining Facebook, but you censor yourself more than you do on Twitter, whereas that's more of the young crowd, not majority, but, the people that you interact with and you follow are going to be kind of on your level. They're on Twitter for a reason. And so the ways in which we use social media sites in different ways also impacts our identity on them. Maybe you bully celebrities, and I don't mean to laugh, but I have friends that, I don't watch these Real Housewife shows, but I have friends that do, and they go back and forth and argue with these reality show stars, and it's amazing to me that you can actually have conversations with celebrities, but the fact that they're confrontational about it's just, they would never be that way in person. They would never bully someone in person. I know these people, but the fact that they would do it with celebrities, and I think that's another really interesting topic to think about as far as manipulation of self. How you act. Are you more aggressive online than you would be in person? So there is an article that I found that talks about social network identity. So what I was just talking about. It's called Facebook, Twitter, and Identity Negotiation Theory. And so what this article is talking about is the way that we construct identity as well as relationships expressed on Facebook and Twitter. So the reason they chose those two is because, and I'm reading the abstract right now, they're the top two most trafficked. So they chose Facebook and Twitter because they're most popular, but also because, the identities from Facebook and Twitter differed so significantly. So I'm going to link this article to this announcement so that you can read through and see if it has any relevance to something that you are interested in, or even just your discussion post this week, because I thought it was a really interesting study how we negotiate our identity on two different social media sites. It can get kind of complicated, right? You honestly have to ask yourself, okay, who am I going to be and how am I going to present myself? It's your choice. The second article I wanted to share with you based on the dark and light side and identity on social media was an article that I have been showing my classes for years. I found it and I thought it was surprising that the predictions were so accurate. It was written in 1995, and actually Melody, hi Melody, you already used it in your discussion board posting. I was really happy to see that you found the article as well and found it relevant. So this article is called Life on the Screen, Identity in the Age of the Internet. It was written in 1995, keep that in mind. And there were some predictions made based on the way we communicate in cyberspace and how our communication in cyberspace would affect a couple of things. One of the things it would affect is our sense of unified self. What is unified self? Unified self is, this is who I am. It doesn't matter where I live or what I do or who I'm with. This is me. This is how I describe me. I am outgoing. I am personable. I am happy. I am grateful. All of the things that you would use to say this is who I am. The prediction was we would have an increasing feeling that we have multiple selves, but also contradictory selves. So we act differently. We have a different identity online than we do in person. We have a different identity than we do on Facebook than we do on Twitter. So you can see how this prediction was really accurate. The fact that we have a feeling that we have multiple identities and multiple selves. And you may not be one of those people that thinks I'm a different person. You might feel like, you know what, I'm the same anywhere. That's just who I am. And that's great. But not everyone is that way. The second prediction from this article was that we would have an inaccurate assumption that we know computers, even though we don't actually know the ins and outs and how they work. And this is also, I find it really accurate. Think about how many hours we spend in front of a computer screen. You're in front of one right now. I'm in front of 3 right now. I have a dual screen and then you right here where I'm recording. We spend so much time on computers, but if you asked me to take a computer apart and put it back together, I would fail. I couldn't explain to you how it all works. I just know I need it to work so I can get my job done. And I mean, think about how accurate that prediction in 1995 is in 2018. I found a YouTube video. I'm not going to link it because it's so obnoxious. And it's, teens react to, and it's a series of videos where teens react to things that are no longer relevant to them. And it was about email when it first started and the internet when it first started. It was like a how-to video on how to use email. And they just made fun of it all. And at the end, they asked them questions about how does a modem work and, how a computer works. And they didn't know. They just knew that they knew how to use it, And I just laughed. As obnoxious as that video was, I laughed because it's true, and it's true for me too. I don't know how computers work. I just know I need them to work so that I can work. And I also referenced social cognitive theory. So human behavior is explained with this theory. Social cognitive theory means our behavior is shaped by environmental influences. So the whole nature versus nurture. I behave in a certain way because I was raised by my parents or caregivers this way. Or internal disposition. So this is just personality. I was born with, a short fuse. So behavior is shaped by those two things. And that's what social cognitive theory says in general. Of course, it gets more specific. So if you're looking for a theory to base your paper on, you may also want to think about that one. Moving on to online dating. So on your slide, you'll see that the lecture talks about online daters being frustrated with people's false presentations of themselves. Catfishing is a really interesting phenomenon. I think it's bad. I don't think it's good, but it's interesting. That's really a dramatic phenomenon. Right now, I just really want to think about how we present ourselves in an online dating environment, if you ever have. Not all of us have tried online dating, but if you have, how do you present yourself? If you met someone on Facebook, how did you present yourself on Facebook? And for those of you that were on the dating scene before any of the social media started, before the online dating was, even in place, manipulation of self on a first date is a completely, relevant study on its own, even today. So even in face-to-face first dates, we are presenting our best self. And so the fact that it happens face-to-face, that if you have complete control over how someone is going to interpret who you are, you have a goal of getting a date or finding a romantic partner, you're going to manipulate yourself to, show your best self. Who wouldn't, right? I don't judge anyone for that. But to what extent is it misleading people? To what extent are people getting into relationships with someone they feel like, oh my God, this isn't even what your picture looks like? He may be upset that I am sharing this with you, but my boyfriend has, before we met, had a couple of really funny stories with online dating, and they both had to do with manipulation of self. He didn't feel that he was on the date with the person that he signed up to be on the date with. And so that can be multiple things. It can be the photograph you used. Did you use someone else's photograph? Is it not an updated photograph? But also the way that you communicate. What is your language like? Were you very proper online and then in person you cursed like a sailor? So how you present yourself in an online dating environment has has all to do with how you communicate. There is an article that is called Managing Impressions Online: Self-Presentation Processes in the Online Dating Environment. And so this is a detailed article found in the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication. So there's an entire journal with lots of volumes just talking about computer-mediated communication. So if you're looking for places to sift through articles, the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication is a good one. But this particular article studies self-presentation strategies among online dating participants. So how these participants manage their online presentation of self in order to find a romantic partner, and the strategies that they use to present themselves in the best light possible. And so it's really interesting. I'll link that below. To get more specific, there's also an article talking about the accuracy of the photos that people uploaded in online dating. So it's called Putting Your Best Face Forward: The Accuracy of Online Dating Photographs. And so they studied the accuracy of 54 online dating photographs posted by daters. I will link that below if that sounds interesting to you. I think it's very relevant to the online dating world and how we want to present ourselves, even if it looks just like you. What are you wearing in that photo? What are you doing in that photo? All of those things are communicating your identity to people on these sites. So with that being said, the last slide talks about cyber cheating, and that is actually your discussion board. So I'm not going to say too much on that, but your discussion board post asks, do you view cyber cheating as real infidelity? And so far I've been seeing a lot of course it is, any type of infidelity is, great points being made, amazing arguments supported by, relevant documentation, great job so far. But I have heard people say, just to play devil's advocate here and have an actual discussion, I have heard people say, if it's on Facebook, that's not real life. And I don't think they were talking specifically about cheating, but the fact that someone would say, when I'm communicating with someone on this site, that's not real life. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you're engaging in a conversation with someone, you're communicating with someone, you're alive and they're alive, and you're both interpreting things. If you're a comm major, remember the communication model that was that really straightforward model that you thought, why is my teacher even talking about this? One person has a message, there's the medium, and then the other person interprets the message, and then it just goes back and forth. How is that not real life just because it's happening, via computer? So there are some people that feel like, oh, if it's online, it's not really real life. That's just like, let's pretend. I disagree, but if you agree, I would love to hear that discussion. Again, we're going to keep it polite and professional, so if you disagree with anything, share with us your argument. And this is not going to be one of those catastrophic Facebook threads where everyone is gnawing at each other and trying to, tell you that you're wrong and I'm right. It really is just an exchange of ideas on this forum. So do feel that you are safe to share your thoughts. And remember, you're supporting it with documentation, so if there's research that supports your claim, then you have a good argument, or at least one that's worth considering. So I am excited to continue reading through the discussion board posts. Everyone is doing wonderful. Corey has graded your first discussion boards, so if you haven't taken a look at those comments, look at her comments. She will have given you some really quick feedback that will be helpful to you and your grade, but make sure that you are posting from outside sources as well. So I'm pulling articles that I find that are relevant to the lecture, using Google Scholar mostly, but you can also use the library online database to find these articles. The textbook is really important. I want you to use that textbook, especially in your original post. But as you get into dialogue and discussion with people, look for outside sources, and all of these can be used at some other point, maybe for your final paper if it's relevant, or other courses, especially if you're a comm major. Use them, save them somewhere. Don't think that it's going to just be wasted time looking for articles. You are putting together a scholarly discussion, and it's important to pull from many different sources, not just one. So that's just another tip and advice. I hope that you all have a wonderful week. Reach out to me with any questions, concerns, compliments, or complaints. I am always happy to hear from you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.